the Indian government has successfully finished its largest anti-Naxal operation till date. It is Operation Black Forest, which has been conducted in the region of Karraguttalu or Karraguttalu Hills, which are present in the border between Telangana and Chhattisgarh. This Karraguttalu Hills has been a traditional stronghold of the Naxal organization. And in fact, the Karraguttalu region is a very dense and inaccessible forest which has a length of nearly 60 kilometers and a width of nearly 20 kilometers. And the Indian security agencies, particularly CRPF, has got a complete operational dominance over the region. And the same Karraguttalu region is in fact the meeting place for the top level leaders in the Naxal movement. The operation has been conducted from April 21st to May 11th. And in this period, nearly 31 Naxals have been encountered. In fact, apart from 31 Naxals being encountered, Indian government also stated very clearly that we were able to retrieve a lot of ammunition, many IEDs, and we were able to chase out nearly more than 300 or 350 Naxals from the region. As the pressure on the Naxals in the Chhattisgarh region is increasing, they tried to find a safe haven here, and once they are pushed out from here, they have to go back to Chhattisgarh. Maybe this is the beginning of end for the Naxal movement, because all the final safe havens of the Naxals are taken under the control of the government, and government is establishing complete operational dominance over the regions. And in fact, we will become Naxal free Bharat by 31st March of 2026, which has been set as a deadline by the Indian government. China has resorted to cartographic aggression once more. Cartographic aggression is a phenomenon wherein you publish maps and you rename territories which are not under your sovereign control. In fact, China has resorted to this practice earlier in South China Sea, and now it is extending the same policy to Arunachal Pradesh in India, which it infamously calls as South Tibet or Little Tibet, and it has named this province as Jiangnan in the Chinese maps. In fact, this way of showing our territory as part of their territory, renaming of the places in Arunachal Pradesh is part of their strategy from 2017. They have done the same in 2017, 2021, 2023 and 2024, and yesterday also they resorted to the same practice. And if you observe, this renaming of places is part of their assertion of sovereignty over the region. It is part of their information warfare strategy, and they are also trying to give a domestic message to the ultra-right community which is present in China. And these kind of activities by the Chinese challenging the historically established McMahon line, which it accepts as a boundary with Myanmar, is something which is reprehensible. Primarily because India had always an inalienable right for Arunachal Pradesh, and along with that, Arunachal Pradesh has always been part of India, and it will be, and it is part of India. And along with that, the Chinese have called this exercise as a standardization exercise, and the Indian government says that these exercises are senseless and futile exercises. Indian government has provided approval for 2 varieties of genetically edited rice. In fact, these rice varieties are developed by various research agencies under the guidance of ICAR, that is Indian Council for Agriculture Research, and the 2 varieties are, one is DRR Dhan 100, which is also called as Kamala, and it is a genetically edited variety of Samba Masuri rice, whereas the other variety is Pusa DST rice 1, and it is developed from a rice variety which is called as Maruteru 1010. So these are the 2 genetically edited rice which have been developed by ICAR, and they have been developed by using a technology which is called as SDN1 and 2. SDN1 means it is a technology which is also called as site-directed nuclease. And in this site-directed nuclease 1 technology, the gene of an existing variety, it would be cut and it would be allowed to repair naturally in order to bring about enhanced qualities for the grain. Whereas in SDN2 technology, what you have to do is they will cut the gene and apart from that provide a guidance in order to repair. So if it is cut and allowed to naturally repair, then it is SDN1. and if it is cut and made repair through a guided mechanism, then it is SDN2. And these are the two gene editing technologies that we have used currently. And in fact, one more important thing is, because of this genetic editing, the varieties that have been developed, particularly Kamala, it has 20-day earliness. It means that if the traditional varieties of rice are being produced in 100-day span, this would be produced in 80-day span itself, which will in fact substantially increase the fertilizer dependence or reduce the fertilizer dependence. And along with reduction in fertilizer dependence, they also play a very important role in bringing about superior yield, high nitrogen efficiency, and this variety also has drought tolerance of its own. Whereas the Pusa DST variety is very suitable for saline and alkaline soils. So these are the two important developments of Kamala and Pusa DST. Now, the bigger question is genetic editing a part of genetic modification? Because the Indian government has very clearly stated that this gene editing of rice has been conducted for the first time in the world in India. Now, when it comes to genetic modification is usually a technology which uses SDN3, that is a site-directed nuclease 3 technology. And in site-directed nuclease technology 3, what you will do is you will cut the gene, you will provide guidance with respect to the repair, and during the repair, you will also introduce a foreign gene into the existing gene and make an attachment. And this introduction of foreign gene makes the practice genetic modification. And the Indian government is saying that genetic editing is a very safe process and there are no problems associated with genetic editing. But at the same time, we need to understand, for genetically modified crops, there is an approval mechanism. There is field trial system which has been set up under an agency which is called as GEAC. But for these kind of genetic editing practices, there is no standard approval procedure. Should we consider the genetic editing and genetic modified crops as two different varieties is the question here. Then along with that, many farmer rights organizations, they are saying that the SDN1 and SDN2 technologies, both of them are IPR protected. And if any agency uses these two technologies, they have to pay some money to the companies which hold the IPR for both the technologies. In this way, if they have to pay this compensation, then it will completely compromise the seed sovereignty of the Indian farmer. It will lead to enhanced costs of production. But at the same time, there is also one more dimension. Does man have the right to play God? In fact, by genetic editing, aren't we trying to play God, and messing with the source code of the genes is something that we need to understand. In a very important development today, Indian President Draupadi Murmu has sent a set of 14 questions to Indian Supreme Court. In fact, she asked these questions to the Indian Supreme Court under the constitutional guidance or mandate of Article 143. In fact, under Article 143, the executive, particularly the president, can ask some legal questions to the Supreme Court. And by exercising this right, she has sent this set of 14 questions. And in fact, if you look at the 14 questions, they are primarily targeted against the Supreme Court's judgment, which has been given on April 8th, 2025, providing deemed assent to nearly 10 bills of Tamil Nadu, many of which were reserved to the president by the governor, and a unique reinterpretation of Article 200, wherein the term as soon as possible has been interpreted to be 3 months by the Indian Supreme Court. In fact, this unique and creative interpretation is something which needs to be understood. First and foremost, the Supreme Court made this unique interpretation in order to protect the federal principles of the country, and along with protection of federal principles, it also made this declaration saying that the governor is working as an extra constitutional agent and he is in fact stifling the voice of the popularly elected assembly, as is the statement that has been used by the Supreme Court. Now, the presidential questions are very clear. Does the Supreme Court have the right to make this kind of creative interpretation of Article 200 by exercising its power of Article 142, which is meant to provide complete justice to various parties? The second question that it has asked is, what are the options present to the governor under Article 200? Can the governor use his discretion in Article 200? And what is the justiciability factor of the Article 200 are the three questions that have been raised. What is the options available to the president or to the governor? What is the discretionary power of the governor? And what is the justiciability of Article 200 are the three questions which have been asked. And along with that, the presidential 14 questions also very clearly asked a question saying that can the Supreme Court give a creative interpretation of the Constitution and legislate where the Constitution is silent? And along with that, the 14 questions also include a direct reference to how only a two-judge bench can determine such important constitutional issue. There should have been at least a constitutional bench constituting of 5 judges in order to determine the case. Now, one more important question that has been asked by the president is it mandatory for the president and governor to consult with the Supreme Court in order to give assent to the various bills which have been reserved from the state government? Is one more question that has been asked. And can courts impose the deadlines, and can courts act as super legislatures is something which is at the heart of the 14 questions. And along with that, the 14 questions also directly point us towards the issue of separation of powers, where the judiciary is not supposed to enter into the executive domain and the executive and legislature are not supposed to enter into the judicial domain. But this overlap is something which is very interesting, and the president's questions and what are going to be the Supreme Court's responses is something which has to be awaited, and based on the responses we can come to a judgment whether the Supreme Court was right in providing this creative interpretation, or should it have restrained itself from the functions of the legislature and executive. Thank you.